Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today we're going to be discussing all of the series that I just quit. Now, if you are maybe at all familiar with my channel, you may know that I have been trying to finish a lot of series this year because I'm kind of a nightmare at it. I really suck at it. Because I've been doing that, I have reflected on a lot of series I've started and even continued on in, and have ultimately allowed myself as the completionist to let things slide, to let things be done, to just quit them. It's funny, when joining BookTube, or even before when I was just watching it, I had this ridiculous notion that I would finish basically every series that I started. I'm like, I'm a completionist. I do things all the way to the end, even if it makes me miserable. And I'd like to say that I've grown from then. I highly doubt I'll continue on. Could it happen? Maybe. Will it? Probably not. So let's just discuss some of them. I'm going to start it off actually with The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. I couldn't remember his name. I'm pretty sure I read this before BookTube. It must have been. I have vivid memories of listening to the audiobook before going to meet V.E. Schwab, and I did that like in 2016, 2017, I can't remember. But yeah, this series, I don't actually think it was terrible, the first book, but I know a lot of people, even in its heyday, say that it was like a lesser dystopian sort of sci-fi thing. It goes through very kind of tired tropes. Basically, as soon as I finished it, I had zero interest to continue on. There's no way that I would ever pick this up like 4 or 5 years, however long it's been since reading the first one. And also the author and his family have kind of been like a dick on Twitter, no? I'm pretty sure they've like harassed like people when they don't like his books. I'm pretty sure. So it just doesn't seem worth it. Another one that I think I definitely read while starting BookTube are the first 2 books in the Three Dark Crowns Quartet. I think it's a quartet. When I was reading them, it was supposed to be a duology. And that's exactly why I picked up the second one. This is a young adult fantasy series that focuses on like 3 princesses or to-be queens, but to be queen, they have to kill each other in this like trial. Premise was great. The execution, I could not stand. I didn't particularly like the writing. I thought it was ridiculous by the end of 2 books that certain things had not yet been resolved, and there were just like cliffhangers to keep you reading. There were a lot of flaws to this book. I think I gave like one of them 2 stars, the next book 1 star. It just wasn't a fun time for me, and we're going to expose myself for still owning a lot of these books I'm going to talk about. I've gotten good at unhauling, but when it comes to books I've already read, I don't want to unhaul them because that just makes my read to unread ratio even worse. It's a fun predicament. So hopefully when I actually unhaul books again, hopefully I'm brave enough to put these on this list. It's ridiculous. It's such a dumb thing for me to worry about. But one I have read and will not be continuing is the Walk on Earth a Stranger. I think it's a trilogy, and I went and read the first and the second book. It's a YA historical fantasy-ish story told during the gold rush. No, I think her parents get killed and her evil uncle is after her because she has the ability to detect gold. That's it. Look at me remembering, even though it's been years. I remember having very complicated feelings about this first book, and I was like, okay, well, there's enough in here for me to continue on to the second, which I did. And the second, I just remember being so annoyed, and then the way it ended, I was like, okay, why is there a third book? It ends perfectly as a duology, in my opinion, and that just made me even more mad that the series was continued when it doesn't need to be. There's also the fact that there's supposed to be kind of messy representation in here for First Nations peoples. Also, I believe there's a Chinese character in the second book. That rep has also been questioned, so there's no way I would pick up the last one. Certain plot points were way too extended for such a long period of time to finally get moving, to just extend the book further. Covers were really nice. I think that's why I was so reluctant to get rid of it. It's very nice and shiny. I haven't read actually many graphic novels, but I will definitely not be continuing on with Sex Criminals by, I have no idea. I read the first 2 or 3 volumes on like a New Year's Eve or like the day before that to just get my goal over like 65 books, whatever year I read them. And I didn't particularly like the first one, but again, I wanted to get over that goal. Straight up, I just don't remember what goes on in these, and I remember not being super impressed when reading them. I think I gave like first volume 3 stars and the other 2 volumes 2 stars. If that, it will definitely not be continuing on with those. I just pulled this now. I'm not going to be continuing on with Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan. I actually read this a month ago, 2 months ago, and was very underwhelmed by it. I thought the story was way too jam-packed. I didn't like some of the treatment of characters, and I don't care that this was set in the 80s. I didn't like the discussion of like queer people, and I think there's some racist things in here too. I can't remember. It's been like 2 months since I've read it, and I have blacked out everything, nearly everything about this story. It absolutely did not impress me, so there's no need for me to continue on. It feels so nice saying you're not continuing on with series anymore. It feels freeing, honestly, liberating. One book that I read, I think from my library, is the Mirror Visitor Quartet. I think the first book is called A Winter's Promise. This is also by Christelle Dabos. This shit is hard to remember. I blocked a lot of this shit out. I read this last year. This is a very popular series in French. It's being currently translated to English, and I was very unimpressed. There was a lot of like cliche YA tropes in here. It's just so bland. And I found the writing very difficult to get a hold of, get a grasp of, and I fully acknowledge that that could be the translation's fault. The concept is so cool, but I did not like the way it was written. It's a real bummer when you have to give stuff up when you think you're gonna like it a lot. I was so excited for it and pretty bummed out. Another one I'm really sad about, it was just so unfortunate that I didn't like it, was The Bells by Danielle Clayton. This is a young adult fantasy that I think I read also sometime last year, and I just was so underwhelmed by the story. I wanted it to go deeper, to expand more into the corruption of the society, and I found our main character to be very frustrating because she didn't know what was going on, so you as the reader, being in her head, knew nothing that was going on, and it just wasn't a fun reading experience. I liked the setting. Again, it was so cool. This had the potential, but it just wasn't for me, and I don't want to read and review the next book, which I think this is only a duology, but I don't want to read it and then like just shit on it because I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna like it, you know? So I'd rather pass this along. The next book is the one that I think has the the biggest of the small chances for me to continue on in the series, and that's Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. I actually think I did a review for this some time ago. This is a young adult fantasy story with an FF romance in here between 2 princesses, and like it's a world with no homophobia, which was so nice to read. But the book was boring. It was very much focused on like horses and a very, very weak plot. And I just, as much as I liked the 2 characters and they weren't great, it fell flat. I did like the ideas of what could come next, so I could pick it up, but it's so unlikely. So the next 2 books I'm looking at, I'm trying to decipher like which one should I leave for last, because both of these books I fucking hate, and both of these books are beloved here on YouTube. Alright, so I'm going with Gideon the Ninth. I will not be continuing on in this series. I can't remember what it's called. I was so disappointed and so annoyed by this book last year. It was featured in my worst reads of 2019. I hated this book. This book was a hot mess. It was like pulling teeth to complete it. It was so convoluted. Will not be continuing on the series. If I do, someone needs to smack me, because apparently I'm now a masochist and I just like inflicting pain on myself. It was not worth the time or my money. I was so mad that I fucking pre-ordered this book. So mad. Okay, and the next book I also featured on my worst reads of 2019 because this book also sucked. In terms of disappointment, this was my #1 most disappointing read, and like my #2 worst read of the year, and that's Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Oh shit. Yeah, I hate this book. I was so excited for it. Everyone's like, ooh, dark academia set at Yale, dark things. But this was dark things for darkness's sake. It was edgy to be edgy, and that is my least favorite thing. There are so many things in here that I hated. There are some problematic elements in here with like the depiction of sexual assault, and also our main character essentially being like the magical like person of color. I believe she is Latina, if I remember correctly. The best parts of this book were about a character that wasn't existent in like the main timeline, if that shows you how much I hated this book. Oh, I also don't want to part with this because I spent big money to get this book shipped to me from the UK. About the Waterstones edition because I was so excited for it. So if anyone wants to buy it off me, I'll sell it to you because wow, did I hate that book. So that is it. That is all of the books and series that I'm going to talk about today. I'm sure there are more. It feels fun to rant and be a little negative sometimes. Feels good to purge. Again, now that I've put it out into the world, hopefully I can let these go when it comes time to unhaul some things again. Let me know down in the comments below some of the series that you just have given up on. That would be fascinating, to be honest. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!